Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with me today, even though it's a holiday. I really appreciate it. Like the girl said in the beginning of the meeting, if you have any questions, feel free to even unmute yourself. I'm fine with that. Or if you type something in the chat, even though I'm one of the people who should totally understand Zoom, considering I use it every day, I'm going to have Shane actually read out the questions to me since I am embarrassingly terrible and keep forgetting to look at the chat. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is that okay, Shane? Okay. All right. I tried to do a different format of presenting, so I'm on Canva today. So we'll see how that goes. Like they said, my name is Isabelle Comtois, and I'm a social science teacher at Northwood High School. So a little bit about my background. Here, I'm going to move this down. Is that I am definitely a weird person, and I graduated from Northwood High School. So I graduated in 2012, and I, in a million years, would never have guessed that I would be teaching at the school that I ultimately went to. I would have bet against myself for sure. That said, I'm super happy I'm at Northwood. I absolutely love it. It's like the best place to start off my teaching career. After Northwood High School, I went to Cal State Fullerton for a year. So my parents, my wonderful parents, were all from Canada. And in Canada, you don't save hundreds of thousands of dollars for college. It's just not a thing that happens there. So when we moved to the United States, my parents had to have a really honest conversation with us. And that was, we don't have any money for you to go to colleges really far away. So when I was a senior at Northwood, I really only had two options, either UCI or Cal State Fullerton. And all my brothers went to UCI, so I thought I'd be a contrarian and go and be a Titan at Cal State Fullerton. However, after my freshman year, I realized I wasn't really happy there. It's even hard for me to describe to this day exactly why Cal State Fullerton wasn't my happy place, but I decided to go away from Cal State Fullerton and go to IVC for a semester so I could ultimately save up enough money and then transfer to a school I actually wanted to go to. Looking back at it now, I should have just gone to IVC off the bat. I should have just saved my money right away. And so, if this is something that your parents have had a conversation with you and I've talked to you about how to save for college and all that kind of stuff, I highly recommend you try not to fall into the pitfalls of Northwood, the pressure, I should say, of going to a 4-year off the bat. And I should have gone to IVC right away because I honestly loved it. Go Lasers. Anyways, I then went to UCLA where I was able to double major in psychology and history. And it was awesome. I loved my professors. I loved what I was studying. And I always had in the back of my head that I would ultimately be a teacher. From there, I went to UCI to get my master's and my teaching credential. So I have what's called a Master's of Arts in Teaching. It's an MAT, as well as my social science credential, which means that I can teach gov, econ, psychology, sociology, and of course, any type of history under the sun. So, a little bit about me. I actually always wanted to be a teacher. I was the cliche 6-year-old playing dress up with a fake whiteboard in my classroom. I would have my teddy bears and give them homework. I would teach them about what I watched on TV. And so I kind of knew that that was a direction I would always feel passionate about. And it wasn't until 7th grade that I started to think about what I actually wanted to teach. And that's when I started to fall in love with history. For those of you that went to Sierra Vista Middle School, like me, you'll know Mr. Millers. He was my 7th and 8th grade history teacher, and he made me fall in love with history. Since then, I've always loved it. I always had social science teachers that made me connect what I was learning to the real world around me. So I realized that that was the type of teacher I wanted to be, somebody who would help you guys deal with the real world outside of the classroom. That said, when I was in college, I kind of felt weird about going right away into teaching. I was like, maybe I should explore other career options. Maybe I should try something else. And so I thought I'd want to be in politics. And so I went and I was a congressional intern in Washington, D.C. for about 3 months. And I legitimately hated it. It was awful, you guys. Okay, this isn't to say you yourself shouldn't ever be interested in being a congressional intern. It was just not my jam. Okay, I'd have to answer the phone calls and people would be yelling at me about things that I had no control over. I was like 20 years old, had no idea what they were even yelling about. And I realized one of the reasons why I wanted to go into politics was potentially to like create a positive impact. And it turns out that that's not really why people go into politics all the time. So I quickly ran out of Washington, D.C. And being in DC actually solidified my passion for being a social science teacher. For example, one day this woman called me. I would answer the phone. Hello, Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez's office. How can I help you? And the woman immediately starts yelling at me about how Loretta Sanchez, the congresswoman I was working for, was eating horse meat and was like talking about how her uncle had told her this article and how she then saw it on Facebook. And I immediately wanted to hang up the phone, but of course couldn't. But I immediately had this wave of like, girl, you needed a better history teacher. Like, you needed to figure out how to critically think, how to look up a source, and how to actually form a coherent argument. But of course, that's not what I said. I said, thank you so much for your concern. I will pass that message along. And I immediately had this like, I got to get out of here. I got to do something bigger and better than this. Um, and then I just wanted to actually show you that picture of me on the top. I'm the one on the left, in case you can't tell, is me on ASB when I was 17. I was faculty liaison. So that's just proof to show you that I always wanted to be a teacher, hence why I was faculty liaison. Oh yeah, in elementary school, it's just not my jam. I have not enough patience. They're so cute, but for only like 30 minutes. And then I have violent thoughts. So then I have to walk away. So middle school or high school is where I knew I wanted to be. So what does a typical day for a teacher look like? I just wanted to point out that this picture is not staged. This is like an actual picture I sent my friends because they texted me and wanted to hang out one night. And I had so much grading to do. So that was my response to them, because that is unfortunately kind of a typical day for a teacher. Anyways, I typically wake up at around 5 a.m. And then I head to water polo practice because I am a water polo coach. And water polo practice goes from about 6 to 7:30. And then I immediately head to my room to prep for the day. The beginning of the day is like the most important part, because whatever I set up in that first hour of my day is going to give me the trajectory for how chaotic I feel later on in the day. I then teach pre-COVID from 8 to about 1:45, and then I head over to more water polo practice from 2 to 4:30. At that point, I'm like so over being at Northwood that I immediately literally sometimes run to my car so I can just leave. And then I come home and I'm usually grading or lesson planning till about 6 o'clock. Like, I do about an hour of work at home. And then I have dinner, which is like my calming time. I love to cook, I love to bake. And then I'm in bed by 9 p.m. because sleep is super important to me and I will prioritize it at all costs. Another thing that I wanted to point out that's really typical for teachers is that Sundays are absolutely a work day for us. We may not be answering your emails, granted, but we've definitely looked at them and read them. And more importantly, Sundays are the prep day for the entire week. So I frequently have to lesson plan or grade. So this meme really spoke to me because it says, when you're enjoying your weekend and suddenly you remember how much grading and lesson planning you have to finish before Monday hits. This is like actually me every Sunday. On Sundays, I typically get up around 7 and then I work from around 8 to 12. So it's like a solid 4 hours nonstop of working on Sundays at least. Sometimes it's more if a new unit is about to hit. The other thing that I wanted to point out about teaching that I wasn't really ready for or necessarily even thought of was that lesson planning is a science when it comes to teaching. So the way that this works is that you actually start off really big. Your teachers will come up with these really big ideas that they want to teach you. And then from this big idea, they work their way down, figuring out how on earth am I going to get you to these big picture ideas? It's what teachers call backwards planning. So you actually start at your finish line and then work your way back down from there. So a single lesson to actually plan everything, the worksheets, the PowerPoints, and the research, because there's so much research, takes about 2 to 4 hours per lesson. And a single unit can take anywhere between 20 and 30 hours. Thankfully, Northwood is a really great place to work, and a lot of teachers work together on these things. So sometimes it's not as daunting. But if you're a teacher like Mr. Banks, for example, who has multiple preps, so he teaches psychology, he teaches forensic psych, he teaches AP World History. He's doing all of that for every single individual class he has. And as you're lesson planning, you are constantly trying to predict where your students will be confused, predict where you should be asking questions, predict when you're going to stop and pause. It is constantly based on where you think your students will be. Lesson planning is actually one of my favorite parts of teaching because you get to be really creative. And there's always going to be like 1 or 2 lessons a unit that totally spark joy in my heart. And I genuinely can't wait to teach those lessons. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out is that lesson planning is never ending. Even if I reuse a lesson from one year to the next, I change it in a number of different ways. I actually have a binder filled with notes. And after every single lesson I teach, I write myself, my future self, a note about like what worked well and what was a terrible hot dumpster fire and I should never do again. And then the following year, when I open up that binder, I look through my notes and make modifications so that I'm actually constantly improving my lessons and making them geared towards the best teaching possible. So I wanted to stop right here before I start talking about teaching in COVID. And I wanted to see if you guys had any guesses about what the number one complaint teachers have about teaching during COVID. So you can just type it in the chat. Like when all of your teachers come together during a meeting, what do they automatically all complain about? Okay, so I have some of them that say, okay, let's see. Quiet students, that's a good one. People not having cameras on, oh, that's a good one too. Student involvement, how to work Zoom, lack of enthusiasm from students, how students can't interact. You guys are all pretty much nailing it, and it is my very first bullet point, the disconnection between students. Every single meeting we have, we all talk about how genuinely sad we are about how we feel like we don't know our students that much this year. It's already November, and I'm pretty sure some of my kids don't know my name yet, if I'm being honest. And that is heartbreaking because that's one of the best parts about teaching. So every single week, your teachers literally brainstorm ways to get you all more involved and more connected to school. And we don't even mean like more involved, like, why don't my kids love the Enlightenment? That's not what we're talking about. It's more of like, why do my kids seem so unmotivated and unhappy? Like, what can we do to make you guys happier? Is really the number one complaint we have. We're not giving up on it either. So just so you know, your teachers are still really trying. COVID and teaching is really hard. I definitely was grieving. There were days when I felt like really overwhelmed and I would like try and plan a lesson and I'd make it so that there was like as much student involvement as possible and then it would flop. And I'm not gonna lie, I'd like end the day crying. Not because my students were bad, like not because I was upset about them. I was just grieving what once was. And at the end of the school year last year, I'm sure some of my freshmen told other people. I like totally cried in front of my freshmen because I felt so bad that I wasn't going to get to say goodbye to them in like a meaningful way, because that's who I am. Um, and then COVID and teaching is draining, but in a new way. Like the classes aren't as long. So there's a part of me that actually has more energy at the end of the day, but it's more draining because it's a lot more on me. I feel like I'm doing backflips in the front of the room, juggling things around, like trying to get people really excited. And then it doesn't work. And then I'm like drained and bummed. um, and then there's a kind of a new responsibility that teachers have, which is trying to help you guys create like a new sense of normalcy while also helping our students adjust and cope with the unknowns of the world. And that last bullet point is really hard to do only because we're trying to do it for ourselves as well. Like in real time, your teachers are trying to create their own normalcy and they're trying to kind of bring you guys along with us. So I kind of wanted to go over the good, the bad, and the ugly of teaching, like the best parts of this career, as well as some of the worst parts of this career. So I wanted to start with the bad. Again, this is not a staged picture. This is a picture I took when I was like really angry at the end of a school day and like sent it to my friends on our group chat. And some days you leave feeling really discouraged. Some days your lessons flop, technology doesn't work, something goes wrong. You worked all these hours upon hours to like make something meaningful, and it just is awful, for lack of a better word. And because teachers put so much of themselves in what they do, it's hard not to take things personally. And teenagers, you guys are awesome. It is my choice to work with you. But sometimes you're moody 16-year-olds and say mean things. And that's totally fine. It's like absolutely a part of the job. But sometimes it's hard not to take those things personally when day in and day out, you're just trying to help. And then the worst part of teaching is honestly the grading. Like, hands down, I hate it. If I could give everybody an A and just focus on the learning and the teaching, I would. Like, grading is not the thing that brings me joy. No part of me wants to punish kids on their grades. I just want to make you guys learn, and I want to make you guys enjoy what you're learning. Seeing a student struggle breaks me. And I don't just mean struggling academically, I mean struggling personally. I'm really lucky that I've made some awesome relationships with students. And sometimes my students have real adult problems. And what I mean by adult problems is real problems that a 16 or 17-year-old shouldn't have to be facing. And when a kid comes up and like tells me these adult problems, it's really hard not to want to break with them. And instead, you realize you can't break because they're coming to you for support. They're coming to you for love and connection. And you've got to be there for them. And you can't let that break. Another annoying thing about teaching is that you spend a lot of your own money. But that's okay. It's not like the worst part. It's, I would say, a bad part, not the ugly part. But like every single decoration in my classroom is my own money. Anytime I bring my TA treats or snacks, it's my own money. And again, it's like totally fine. I don't have to do it. Like, I don't have to bring my TA donuts, but I want to put a smile on their face. And so if that means spending a couple of my own money, it's okay. And let's see. Oh, Northwood has a tendency to want to be perfect. And this perfectionism is not just felt in the students, it is felt in your teachers as well. In the same way that you guys compare your struggles and successes with each other, teachers do it too. And teacher comparison is absolutely a thing, and teacher guilt is absolutely a thing. And teachers will sometimes feel competitive against each other. And again, Northwood is awesome, and it's not like in a crazy, unhealthy way or anything like that. But it can be really hard when you hear people in these meetings talk about these amazing things that they were able to do in your class, and you keep thinking in the back of your head, like, well, I didn't do that. Like, my lessons sucked. My lessons flopped yesterday. And so that pressure of perfection is definitely felt among the staff. Figuring out what to teach is a battle, and it's really hard because you have certain standards that you have to teach, but you also have a time constraint. And one of my least favorite things in the world is when people will like come up to me and be like, well, when I was in high school, my history teacher never taught about blank. Basically, like implying that their history teacher like totally failed them for not teaching them this like specific content. And the reason why that bothers me so much is because you have history for 2 years and that's it. You have 1 year of world history and 1 year of US history. We will never be able to teach you everything. And that's not the goal. The goal is to make you a critical thinker, an engaging person that wants to be a lifelong learner so that you keep learning for yourself. I would be so sad if all you ever learned about the United States ended when you were 16. It could be a serious problem. So again, the idea isn't that I'm going to teach you everything, but I'm going to give you the skills and the love of history, hopefully, so that you want to keep doing that research for yourself and you want to keep learning more. And then there is a never ending to-do list for teaching. Honestly, like I check something off and I always have more to do. And then lastly, some days you don't always feel valued. Um, During like the COVID stuff, I heard like a lot of people saying like some teachers don't want to come into school because they're lazy, like they just want their jobs to be easier so that they can do it at home. And that made me feel really sad because I don't know a single teacher that doesn't want to be around their students and that doesn't want to give their students 110% of their time and energy. All right, now let's talk about the good because there's definitely way more good about teaching. I promise. The best part of my job is you guys. Honestly, you are the thing that makes me really happy. You're the thing that puts a smile on my face. As much as I love lesson planning, that's not the reason why I go in every single day. And when a student lets me know that they appreciate or value me, I keep that forever. I have like folders filled with thank you notes and cards and like even post-it notes that like students have left on my desk. I will never throw those out because on those days that I leave feeling discouraged or not valued or just feeling overwhelmed, I like open up those cards and read and cry usually, but then I feel better. So those are absolutely really valued by all of your teachers. I have the best coworkers. Specifically, the people that I work with in my pod are like some of my best friends. I work with Mrs. Guy, Mr. Rowe, and Miss Road Armor. We are the same pod. And every break, this is not an exaggeration, we all run into the pod to talk. So in the same way that you guys like go and have your meetup spots with your own friends, like all four of us will meet and be like, oh my gosh, I'll never guess what just happened. Or we talk about our weekends or what we want to eat for dinner, whatever it is. But I honestly don't know how anybody is a teacher without supportive coworkers. Another really good part about teaching is you get to be really creative. How you teach is up to you and it's your style. And in the same vein of that, being a teacher is like putting on a performance. Don't laugh at me, but when you guys were like, when I'm saying you guys, but when I was a first year teacher, so like when Shane was a freshman, for example, or Elise was a freshman, or I'm pretty even sure Sean was in my world history class as a freshman, I would rehearse the lesson like 3 times before teaching it. I would like have my PowerPoint up and I would go through all the slides, like making sure I knew exactly what I was doing. And I did that for every single lesson to make sure that I was like ready, that I was going to be engaging, that I knew what was happening. So teaching, there's a big performance aspect of it as well as public speaking. And for the first like 6 months of teaching you guys, I would like shake because I don't like public speaking. It's like not something I'm into. I would be like, oh my gosh, there's like 30 eyes on me. This is so uncomfortable. And I didn't really realize that was going to be a part of it. Some of the other cool things about teaching is that you're never bored because you're a lifelong learner. You're never stagnant. Like I have friends that text me during the day and I literally can never text them back during the day because I'm constantly on my feet. I'm like constantly doing something fun and engaging. And I will have like text messages after text messages from my people who just work in an office because they're bored. And I'm like, I don't know that feeling. um, Other cool things about being a teacher is that there's definitely a community in teaching. Like there's so many Instagram teacher meme pages, and now there's teacher TikToks. And I'm not gonna lie, they make me really laugh. They're pretty good. And then another really cool thing about it is that teaching is one of those jobs where every single day you can actually think about you're making a positive impact. Um, Especially as a social science teacher, when people start talking about like social justice and what you're going to do to better our community and our society. And I had a lot of friends who like work in marketing or communications or who are assistants at different organizations. And they literally would be like, I don't know what to do to help. And I'm like, in this awesome position where I could do so much to help. I can educate a new generation. I can make it so that Gen Z is actually the generation that wants to fight for the rights of everyone. And I think that that's really cool. And because of that, there's a lot of pride in being a teacher. Like when people tell you they're a teacher, they're usually saying it with like pride in their heart that that's a community that they belong to. So before I moved on to the next slide, I wanted to ask you guys about what are some cliches you've heard about teaching or like stereotypes that you've heard about teaching. I'll give you an example, like those who can't do teach is like a cliche or a stereotype about teaching. You guys can type them in the chat. Okay, so don't get paid enough, sick of their students, extroverted people can excel in teaching, weird fashion sense. I mean, that one might be true. Let's see. Okay, so I don't actually go to every single one of these. So I'm going to talk about, first of all, lowest paying job. Okay. We don't get paid the most, but we get paid enough. But in all honesty, because teachers have a super strong union, we might not get the best pay, but when we retire, teachers are set. We have an awesome pension. We have awesome health insurance. So, although my paycheck might never be like $200,000, I can actually make a pretty decent amount of money. In fact, since we're public employees, you can actually look up how much money your teachers make. It's on the IUSD website. But teachers, after about, I think, 12 years, start to make six figures. So, like, not bad. And yeah, I would actually say the biggest perk is when we retire, we get like almost all of our paycheck every single month until we die. So, if I can keep teaching until 62, man, I'm going to have a bunch of money in the bank. um, and then hold on, there was another one that I wanted because I thought that that was interesting. Oh, extroverted people can excel in teaching. I am like not an extrovert. I know it seems like it, but I I'm not a person that likes to be around crowds. I love my alone time, um, which is probably why when I started teaching, I had crazy anxiety every time I'd start the class. My hands would shake. I'd feel really nervous. I'm better at it now, but I still sometimes get really overwhelmed and nervous when I'm teaching a lesson. Um, and I would argue that like it's definitely split 50-50. Some teachers are just better at putting on a performance than others, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're all extroverts or even like people that like to be around big groups. Um, I immediately, when I get home, don't want to be around anyone else because I'm so drained from being surrounded by people day in and day out. And then by the weird fashion sense, I mean, like that might be true. I sometimes wear very weird clothes. But some of the misconceptions that I sometimes hear is that like you teach because you love the content, and that's just false. You end up wanting to be a teacher as your first goal, and then your second goal is trying to figure out a content area that you like. If you're teaching history because you love history more than anything else in the world, you're going to quit. It's like no joke. You're going to quit because you're not going to get to teach what you want to teach. The standards are forced upon you. It is not why you teach. Some people say like, you're so lucky you get to finish work at 3. But as you saw from my typical day, this is a good joke. I've never finished work at 3. So I'll let you know if I ever get to that point though. You have summers off. People are like, you should be a teacher because you have summers off. While summers are really nice, not complaining, I'm like the entire month of August, I work every single day. And I usually have weekly meetings all summer long. So this idea that you actually don't work over the summer is kind of a misconception. It's easy. Being a bad teacher is easy. Finding a worksheet online and giving it to your students is super easy. But being a good teacher takes hours of research, planning, emotional toil, all that kind of stuff. All you do is teach. That's not true at all. Like Shane said in the beginning, I also coach water polo. I'm also the senior class council advisor. I have 3 clubs that I'm an advisor for. I'm a PLC facilitator coach. I have meetings upon meetings upon meetings after school all the time. So there is so much more to teaching than just what you see in the classroom. My responsibilities are much more than that. And then it's people's backup plan. I would say most people that, at least all people that are in the history department, even if it's not their first job that they've ever held, teaching is something that you love to do. It's a passion. You don't do it because you're going to be paid $1 million. You don't do it because it's easy. You do it because you genuinely love it. So I would argue it's like never someone's backup plan. There are so many easier jobs you could do as a backup plan. And then let's see. Yeah, teaching is hard, but it's absolutely worth it. And I feel like a really lucky person that I get to say that I love my job, because I would tell you that about 70% of the adults in my life, my friends and my family, do not love their job. So thank you for listening. And do you guys have any questions?
Okay, Missy, I'll read them out to you right now.
Sweet, thank you.
So the first question that we got was, what are your favorite type of lesson plans? So projects, lessons, anything of the sort.
My favorite types of lessons are the ones that I'm not talking. So like lecturing, I hate. And the reason why I say that is because, again, why I'm a teacher is not because I want to hear my own voice, but it's because I want to hear your voice. So my favorite types of lessons are the ones where I can like hear my students engaging in conversation. Probably my all-time favorite lessons are anytime we do Socratic seminars, which I know give you guys so much anxiety, which is like a stereotype I'm trying to end. Socratic seminars are not scary. And like anytime we have debates, like a mock trial or a debate, and I get to hear people voicing their opinions in these really well researched and articulate ways, makes my heart really happy. And those are the days that I don't talk at all. I don't say a single word other than like, hello, here are the instructions, and go.
Okay. Next question was, so while you were in college, what kind of classes did you have to take that you didn't think you had to take to become a teacher?
So for my undergraduate, the way that teaching works is that you actually don't need a bachelor's in what you're teaching. So it is very likely that you have a teacher that's teaching you English, but in college, maybe they studied psychology. Um, so your like content knowledge can be actually whatever you want it to be. But the way that the state of California makes sure that you know what you're talking about is before you can apply to get a credential, you have to take these tests that prove you know the history content. So before I even got into UCI had to take a test to prove that I knew US history, a test to prove that I knew world history, econ, California history, which was one I definitely needed to brush up on, and government. And so I guess I would say, like, while I was in college, I just thankfully was a history major. So everything I ended up learning, I could apply when I was studying for those tests. And then once you pass those tests and you go get your credential or your master's, none of your classes are ever about history again. All of your classes are about how to teach. So, like, once you take those tests, they're trusting you that you know the content. Like, you're good, you understand it. However, they now need to teach you how to lesson plan, how to give feedback, how to work with populations like kids with special needs or kids that are learning how to speak English for the first time. And so you end up taking a lot more of those classes, which I actually did not know until I was in it.
Mm, that's really interesting. Um, Follow-up question. Someone asked, can you fail those tests? Like if you do, what do you
Yes,
oh.
you fail. Yeah, you can fail. Okay, I will brag. I did not fail. Um, but if you fail the test, you have to take it. They like wait, there's like a 6-week waiting period until you can take another test. And it's actually kind of sad because when I was in my credential program, 2 teachers had to drop out because they never passed their tests. So if you don't pass your test by a certain time, you're done. You're out of the program. And so thankfully those people tried again the following year and got in and like everything's good. Um, but yeah, you can definitely fail, but you can try again.
Okay. And then two people were wondering, how do you deal with like really difficult students or like bad student behavior?
Um, I typically tell myself, well, first of all, I try not to think like any student is bad, is like the first mindset shift.
Mhm.
And then I typically will remind myself that students that are acting out are not acting out because of me. There's something else going on in their life that is causing that behavior. Like me giving you homework or me telling you to take lecture notes should not cause you to implode or be angry or like not want to do anything because you're so cool. It's usually because there's something else going on outside of my classroom. And so if a kid is really struggling or have a behavioral issue, I let that kid struggle. I'm like, okay, like you do you, kid. If you need a break, take a break. And then I pull that kid aside and have like a one-on-one conversation with them. And I would say 95% of the time that I have this like open heart to heart, I find out there's something else. And that typically helps the kid understand that, like, I'm not your enemy. I'm not trying to make your life hard. I'm trying to help. And that usually helps it.
Perfect. Okay. Someone did ask, how difficult is it to lesson plan when you have a substitute? And like, what are the biggest challenges you face when you're back in the classroom
It's
after?
the worst, you guys. It is literally the worst. I don't know a single teacher that would want a sub in their class. Like, teachers will come to school sick because it's easier for them to be in there than to have a sub. Um, Basically, anytime you give a sub a lesson plan, you are assuming the kids will learn nothing. So it either needs to be review or it needs to be something that you're okay being like, you didn't get anything out of it. That's okay. Hence why documentaries are a great thing when a sub is there, or like some kind of quick assignment that they can do. Sometimes teachers are forced because they like have to move forward to do something really meaningful. Like if I'm ever absent during the anchor, I will like be online and be like, you need to email me all of your theses so I can make sure to help you.
Mhm.
So yes, subbing lesson planning is terrible. And the number one step, assume it's a throwaway lesson.
Perfect. Okay. How many days off do you get in a week?
I have Saturday. I try like not to do anything on Saturday. If a new unit is coming up, I may have to work on Saturday. And when I was a first year teacher, I never had a day off. Like I don't want to sound too extreme, but I literally never had a day off. um, Now I typically work Sundays, but that's about it.
Okay. Um, is there any point in the school year where it feels like there's an easier or lighter workload, or is the work balanced throughout the year?
I wouldn't say easier, but I will explain that the months of October and the months of April are the worst. Like, I don't know if the other ones are necessarily easier, but October, there's no breaks for you guys, and we feel it. Like, our students are typically like kind of angsty in October. And then the same thing with April. There's no breaks for a really long time because Memorial doesn't happen until like the middle of May. And you guys, coming hot sometimes. And so, like, teachers always joke that October and April are the worst months of the school year.
Mm, okay, that's terrible. It's kind of true though. Last
I
month was
mean, it's true
rough.
for you, it's true for us.
Okay, going back to how you earned your teaching credential, someone was wondering how long it took for you to earn it.
So, there are different programs that you can take it at different speeds, but I did the like typical program. So it's about 9 months for the teaching credential. So it's like a full year of schooling. And then at the exact same time as that, I also did my master's. So it was 9 months of the credential. And then on top of that, I had to do 9 months of my master or a year of my master's. So
Mhm.
it was about in total 13 months.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay, outside of teaching, someone was wondering about your coaching life. So is there a specific reason to why you decided to coach? Like, did you play water polo in high school?
I played in high school, and the number one reason why I'm coaching is out of guilt because they wanted me to, and I felt like I should help. But I honestly really like it. Like, the boys and girls are really sweet, and I coach frosh soft, which is so fun because like these are unlike other sports like basketball or soccer where you come in with like some background knowledge. Like, most of us have played soccer at some point. For water polo, that's not the case. I have some kids that have like never swam before. They don't know any of the rules. Like, some of them are shocked that they can't touch the bottom of the pool. And so it's kind of fun because it ends up being a little bit of a hot mess. um, but I honestly, it's a huge time commitment. It is a huge time commitment. So I don't think coaching is something I can do forever. Like, probably like a few more years to like not feel guilty anymore.
Yeah, I get that. Okay.
Um,
What's the name?
yeah, it happened.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Someone was wondering how you were able to find your job at Northwood and wait, and if you were able to get the job based off of connections or like just interning from a teacher.
So like I said, I didn't want to work at Northwood, but I knew Northwood was a great school. Like, even in the teaching community, everyone knows Northwood is a really good school. So I did my student teaching at Northwood. I like went back to my old teachers. I was like, help me out. And then I'm out. I literally told everyone, I was like, I'm not going to work here. Like, what I told them. And I then started applying for jobs elsewhere. I got a couple job offers in the Bay Area, in Santa Barbara, and I even got job offers from Portola, Woodbridge, and Uni. However, um, when I found out Northwood was gonna have a job opening, they like asked me to interview because I was student teaching there. And I was like, okay, but like, honestly, I don't know, guys. I said I wasn't gonna do it. And then I did the interview, and I just kind of realized that teaching is so hard, and I really wanted to be at a school that I knew I would get supported in. And unfortunately, the schools that I applied to in the Bay Area that I got offers for were awful. Like, the interviews were terrible. The like when I dug into the school more, it wasn't the students, it was just like the school itself. And then when I got offers at Woodbridge, Portola, Uni, and Northwood, I felt like, well, I gotta pick Northwood because they had helped me out so much in who I am as a person that once I got the job offer, I really felt like, okay, this is the place I'm supposed to be, even though I told them I wasn't gonna do it.
That's perfectly fine. We got lucky with you. We're so happy to have you.
Oh,
Okay.
well, thank you, thank you.
So someone asked, how often do students come to you about their personal problems and looking for advice?
It comes in waves. Um, I would say at the very least, I talk to a student about their personal life and like a personal issue at least 2 times a week. Um, there are some weeks though where I don't know if there's like something in the water, and I will literally have like a kid in my classroom at 7:30 crying, a kid in my classroom like running to me at break because something has happened, a kid in my classroom at lunch because they just got in a fight with their boyfriend, and a kid after school running to me because their mom just texted them that they're grounded and some fight broke out. Um, and that'll be like all in one day. I'll have like 4 or 5 different people wanna talk to me about like a personal issue that's going on. And so that's like a more extreme day, but I have been late to many water polo practices and many meetings because I'm like talking to a kid that is crying and upset about something. And of course, I'm not gonna leave.
Mm. Well, since you deal with like students like that, it sounds like pretty often. Can you tell if like do you know if like any of your other colleagues would be able to like tell if students were struggling? Just like outside of school.
I think I get a higher number than most,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of teachers
Okay.
talk to their students and like have the same types of stories.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know why. Maybe I like invite it. I'm like, tell me about your problems. um, but I usually take it like I'm flattered that a student sees me as their trusted adult, as like cliche as that sounds. And I'm gonna do everything I can to like live up to that honor. And I literally mean it as an honor. Like, what can I do to help you during, if it's a fight with a friend or a boyfriend or something as serious as like a serious family struggle? And what can I do to make your life better?
Okay. A little off topic, but when if parents complain about your teaching, not that I think any parent would, does that make you feel less confident?
Oh my God, it breaks me. It makes me so sad, you guys. And yes, parents have complained about me. When I became a teacher, I was so naive. I was like, I have their best interests at heart. Like, no, who would complain about me? Like, all I'm here to do is help you. And my first year of teaching, within 2 weeks, someone complained about me.
Oh.
And it was my first year, and I was devastated. And they complained about me because I had a pride flag in my room. And the parent was unhappy that I was advocating. They literally put it in quotes. I don't know why, because I'm like, yeah, I'm advocating. Like, don't put it in quotes. I am advocating for the LGBTQ community. And it made me so sad, you guys. It made me so sad. It not only made me sad for like that particular student that their parents were like teaching them that that was a wrong thing, but it definitely shook my confidence because it's like, am I hurting someone? Like, am I making people feel uncomfortable? Am I doing something that I shouldn't be doing? Um, that was like the biggest complaint. And you know what? Northwood had my back. Northwood like would not let this teacher, or this not teacher, excuse me, this parent talk to me that way. Like told me that it was my right to have the pride flag. In fact, afterwards I had like other teachers coming up to me being like, I just put up a pride flag in my room. Like it like rallied us together. Um, so it does happen, and it does. And thankfully, Northwood is awesome and is like supportive to you. But it doesn't matter. Like even if I know the parent is wrong, like in that situation, I knew the parent was wrong. um, it still made me really sad. And I remember like reading the email and like crying, and then the bell rang and my students had to come in my room, and I was like like trying to like calm down to like let you guys back in and being like, so John Locke in the Enlightenment. But yeah, that's really hard.
Okay, well, let's finish off on a lighter note. What's your favorite memory as a teacher as of now?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard.
Top, very like the first thing that comes to mind is Comtois.
It's hard. That's really hard because
Mhm.
there's so many. There's like so many. I guess I would say my one of like okay, so I went to Northwood. Remember I told you guys this? I feel like I've said it 1,000 times now. And two of my all-time favorite teachers were Mrs. Guy and Mr. Guy. Mrs. Guy was my freshman year English teacher, and Mr. Guy was my gov teacher. And they were just like some of my favorite people. Like I just like loved them as humans. And I had a student once write me a letter, and she just moved here from Utah. She was like feeling really overwhelmed, and in the letter she wrote like this huge thank you letter about like how much she appreciated me and how much she like felt that I was like supporting her and helping her and like during all of her family drama. And her very last line was something along the lines of like, you, Mrs. Guy and Mr. Guy have changed my life. And I was like, I'm lumped in with Mr. and Mrs. Guy. Like, I was like, those were the teachers that helped me. And this girl is now seeing me at like their same level, like blew my mind. It was like, no, I'm not that influential. So yeah, that was like one of my favorite ones, but there's been a lot.
That's amazing. I love that. Okay, well, thank you for today, Miss Comtois. I think we learned a lot, and we really appreciate the time you took today.